Hello, friends. Guess what? Today is the release date of arguably one of my most anticipated releases of the year, and that is The Songbird and the Heart of Stone by Clarissa Broadbent. She wrote the Crowns of Nyaxia series. This is still a continuation of that series, but it is now the start of a new duology. So the first books, The Serpent and the Wings of Night and The Ashes and the Star-Cursed King, that is a completed duology that happens to be in this world. And you actually get to meet the new main character of the new duology that came out today. So I'm very excited. I'm also highly anticipating the new Mary E. Pearson, which is The Courting of Bristol Keats. I have loved Mary E. Pearson in the past. I really enjoyed The Remnant Chronicles. It's actually one of my favorite YA series. Like, I have a handful of favorite YA series that I have like the best memories about, and that is one of them. And this is her adult debut. It also has fae in it, which I wasn't really expecting, because The Remnant Chronicles, while it has magic and while it's a fantasy book, it's not really like creature fantasy. So I was interested in the fact that she's doing a fae one. And then a book that became an anticipated release for me because I read from this author over the last couple of months, actually, and that is Sarah Hawley, I think is how you say it. Her book Servant of Earth just came out, and this one is an adult fantasy novel. It's a little more serious. She has written, so far that I've read, the Glimmer Falls series. You may have seen me talking about this trilogy within the last couple of vlogs, especially in October. So I just really fell in love with her writing. I fell in love with her character work. She did a really great job in this series of making you really love the characters, really getting you into the humor and the vibes of it, but also having pretty good plot lines. So I knew that whenever she was releasing a new book, I was going to buy it. But I'm excited, I'm invigorated, I have a really good feeling about all of these books. So let's go to the bookstore and grab them. 'Cause baby, like, ooh, it's all another flower lay. The sun goes around the state. Can't wait for the long day. 'Cause baby, like, ooh, it's all another flower lay. The sun goes around the state. Can't wait for the long day. In the sun when I found you, the one you call. You got what I need, and you always be turning my sky blue. But maybe I can't get to you. Why don't you come to stay? 'Cause baby, like, ooh, it's all another flower lay. The sun goes around the state. Can't wait for the long day. Okay, we're back. I may have done some damage. I don't know what was going on with me today, but I got five. Okay, let's just get into it. So I got The Fury of the Gods. This is the third and final book in the Bloodsworn trilogy by John Gwynne. John Gwynne is also famous for The Faithful and the Fallen, not trilogy, it's just a series. I think there's 5 books in it. The first one being Malice. And as a matter of fact, Becca and her book club, the Ketchup Book Club, is doing a Faithful and the Fallen read-along. If you want any information, I'll link that down below. This is not part of that, but I have read the first 2 books in this trilogy. I really enjoy this trilogy, and so this has been out for a while. I've been eyeing it. I didn't know if I wanted to buy it right away because I actually want to reread the first 2 books in this trilogy. So I was kind of holding off buying this, but obviously no longer. And then I got Blood of Hercules. Why did I get this? I don't know. I read the first chapter in the bookstore and it just did something for me. Also, look at this beautiful art. It's stunning. It's so stunning. This just sounded very interesting. I'm just a girl, and as it turns out, I'm Hercules. Hercules, bless my soul, Herc is on a roll. My blood test reveals I'm part of the powerful elite. I'm one of them, a Spartan. So here's the thing, I'm not really somebody who cares about like Greek gods, about Norse mythology, anything like that. I don't care that much. Like, I'm interested in it. I think it's interesting. I think that some of the stories are very fascinating, but I don't have interest in reading retellings about it very often. But something about Hercules, I'm a Hercules girl. It's probably because I watched the movie so much growing up. Not that this is going to be anything like a Disney orig, but I don't know. This was calling to me, so I got it. And then I ended up getting all 3 of the books that I said I was gonna get. So I have Servant of Earth by Sarah Hawley. I don't know that much about it. I do know that it's a fae book. So it says, in the underground fae realm, only the strongest and most ruthless have power, but a young human woman forced into a life of servitude is about to change everything. So I think our main character is the one who's human, and she's gonna change everything. And then we have the real star of the show, The Songbird and the Heart of Stone by Carissa Broadbent. I am just so excited for this one. I have been waiting with bated breaths for this book to come out. I can argue that this is my most highly anticipated release of this month, if not the year, and it's finally here. I am already 5 chapters in. I managed to snag the audiobook and I am already loving it. So once I get a little bit further in, we will talk more about this, but this is the star of the show. This is the star of the show. And then lastly, and arguably one of the prettier ones, is The Court of Bristol Keats by Mary E. Pearson. Also very excited about this, have very high hopes for it. It has these beautiful edges. I don't often love sprayed edges, but these are actually very pretty. But I'm really excited about this one because it is in the fae world. Like I said, it's Mary E. Pearson's first adult fantasy. And I believe it's fantasy romance because that's what she tends to do. And it says dangerous fae, dark secrets, addictive romance. After losing both their parents, Bristol Keats and her sister struggle to stay afloat in their small, quiet town of Bowes Keep. When Bristol begins to receive letters from an aunt she's never heard of who promises she can help, she reluctantly agrees to meet and discovers that everything she thought she knew about her family is a lie. Her father might even still be alive, not killed, but kidnapped by terrifying creatures and taken to a whole other realm. So yeah, I got 5 books. And I'm happy about it. I really am, because I feel like all of these are going to be bangers. And every single one of these authors, except for the Spartan one, Blood of Hercules, I have read from. And I have enjoyed their work. So that's very positive news, everyone. Okay, let's go continue on. Oh my God, I didn't know. I didn't know. I didn't know. What? This is the tale of how a chosen one falls. I need to be right back. Hold on. So here's the thing. I bought the first one in the Crown of Nyaxia series a while ago. I wanted to read the traditionally published one because I wanted to see what had changed, if I would even remember. I've never checked this. I didn't know! Never trust, never yield, always guard your heart. Oh my gosh. That's so fun. How did I have no idea? Wow. What a time to be alive. Hello, dear readers. I'm 208 pages into The Songbird and the Heart of Stone. It's just fine. It's just fine. It's fine. It's okay. I'm not loving it as much as I thought that I would be. I'm not hating it by any means, but it's really not hitting. It's really not hitting well. I don't know what to do with this revelation. I really don't. I genuinely thought that this was gonna be like my 5-star read of the year. It's not bad. It's just like slightly boring, I guess. And I don't really love saying that about books because that's such an arbitrary thing. Like, what's boring for me is not gonna be boring for you. But I just find my brain wandering elsewhere when I'm reading it. And I find that the couple who's supposed to get together in here, like, they don't have any chemistry to me. Any and all moments that they have where we would get to witness that chemistry in action or get to witness them like falling for each other, it's not really on page. It's kind of like alluded to. I do think we're at a part right now where things are getting a little bit more intense and the couple has this opportunity to really like become a couple that I'm rooting for. But as it stands, like I don't understand it. I just don't understand them as a potential couple. Like that's not what this book is giving at all. I feel like in Serpent and the Wings of Night, it was very evident that they had chemistry from the beginning and that there was like this attraction that was definitely there between them. And I don't really feel that here. But I do have a coworker who read an arc of this and she was telling me that the ending is like mind-blowing and it's really good. So I'm hoping that the second half of this book like really picks up for me and then the ending hits it home. But right now I'm just feeling like very average about this reading experience. I'm gonna read more of this. I'm on my lunch break, so I'm gonna eat and read some of this. Probably watch some Vampire Diaries because I'm rewatching it. And people on my Patreon are watching it, and I'm very behind. I finished this book. I finished it yesterday. I definitely needed the day to kind of sit on it. The last time I talked to you, I wasn't having like the best time. I wasn't hating this book. There was no point in my reading experience that I was hating the book, but I needed some time to figure out like what to say about my feelings because I couldn't quite pinpoint what was bothering me, and I think I figured it out. But overall, because this is the third book in a series, I'm not like giving a synopsis or anything like that, especially because I don't know if people want the couple revealed for them if they haven't even started the first duology. So that's why this is going to be a little bit vague, and that's why my review in general has been a bit vague. But I will tell you that this is in the Crown of Nyaxia world, and the Crown of Nyaxia starts with Serpent and the Wings of Night, and Serpent and the Wings of Night follow our couple Aurea and Rain. And Aurea and Rain enter into this competition called the Kinjari, and the Kinjari is this battle to the death, almost kind of like Hunger Games battle to the death, where the last person standing gets their deepest wish fulfilled by the goddess Nyaxia. And the goddess Nyaxia is the goddess who created vampires. So that is the first duology. And then this one is following a new couple. It is a character that you have met before. And this time there is, in theory, trials. There are in theory trials, but mainly we are spending time in the underworld, and the underworld has these, what you could call trials that they have to get through to continue going deeper and deeper into the underworld. And so there is a mission to kill someone in this book, and that's the whole reason for them going to the underworld. So that's what I'll say about this book. And that's what the Crown of Nyaxia is. And if you didn't know, the Crown of Nyaxia series is going to be a 6-book series with 3 duologies, and each of those duologies are going to be following different couples. Okay, so with all of that said, I'm going to give you my thoughts and feelings vaguely, I guess. I didn't really think about it when I was first starting this vlog about how it would be really hard to talk about this book, simply because I don't know if people want to know who this couple is. So yeah, I'm gonna keep it vague. But essentially, my thoughts and feelings about this can be boiled down to the fact that this felt very monotonous for the majority of the book. I didn't need another book with trials to make this world interesting. We are already set in the world. We are already established in the world. We were just getting an expansion of the world in this book, so I didn't need something to entertain me. They were already in a pretty entertaining space. Like, they were already going to the underworld, which is arguably extremely interesting, extremely scary, extremely intense, but I didn't really feel that at all. I didn't really feel that it was intense. I didn't feel that it was scary. The way that it was set up, the way that they were going through it, just monotonous is the only word I can come up with. This is a fantasy romance, and so the romance just felt so underdeveloped because a lot of it happened off page, and we're getting told things after the fact, like interactions that they had after the fact. We're not really in it with the couple. And as a matter of fact, sometimes because we were so in our main character's head, it almost felt as if this book was singularly focused on her and her backstory and how she got to this point. And then the love interest, the male love interest, would kind of just pop in, and I would be like, oh yeah, he's here. And these other 2 characters that are like traveling with them arguably should be interesting, arguably should be memorable, because it's just the 4 of them. This is all we know at this point. Yet it just felt like it was about our female love interest. And this is also singular POV, so that could be playing into it. I don't know how to explain it. It was almost like she was just doing her thing in the underworld, and there was these other characters that kind of just popped in and out. But somehow I was supposed to be convinced of them falling for each other. And it's not that I don't like them, because I think that there's definitely something there that I could really enjoy, especially because while I'm being a hater right now, I did really, really like the last quarter of this book. The last quarter of this book is the strongest part of the book. I gasped. My jaw was on the floor. Carissa Broadbent is really great at endings. I can give her that. And this is going to leave you wanting the next book. But this is also a fantasy romance. And I felt very frustrated by the fact that the romance just kind of appeared. It was like 1 second they weren't together, and then the next second they were together, and we were supposed to just like fill in the gaps. There's a hummingbird. I'm so sorry. There's a hummingbird. I've had a hummingbird feeder for like months now, and I've seen a few here and there, but this is a treat, okay? And this is 30. If you wanted to know what 30 was like, you're looking at it. Look at him. I've got to send that to Noelle. Well, I got really lost in what I was saying, but I think I was talking about the romance and how it just like happened and we were supposed to fill in the blanks with this romance. And the thing is that I could get on board with this romance had I had a little bit more, because I liked both of the characters. I just feel like I don't know the male love interest very well, and the female love interest, like, we're obviously getting such an intense background. I just felt disconnected from it. I felt very disconnected from it. Like I said, I don't really want to be fully a hater because I loved the end of this book. Like the last quarter of this book kind of brought it back around for me, and I felt like maybe the monotony was worth getting through to this like really explosive ending. Again, I don't rate books, but this wasn't like a 2-star. If I was to give a rating, this wasn't like in the 2-star realm. I definitely don't feel it was that bad. I just really struggled, and I may have hyped it up a little too much. A little too much. Hello, friends. I got new bedding. Not that you care, not that you even knew what my bedding was before, but you know, it's this. So hello. I took a little break from this vlog and I started like 7 other vlogs, and then I came back because I wanted to start the courting of Bristol Keats. And here's the thing, I started it, and I am now on chapter 43, page 212. I don't like this book. I don't like it. I don't like this, which is just really upsetting. It's very shocking. It's appalling a little bit. It's making me a little bit sick to my stomach because why? So I have read Mary E. Pearson before. Like, I really love The Remnant Chronicles. I read it a few years ago, probably back in like 2016, 2017. Really enjoyed the trilogy. I like marathoned it because my identity at that time was marathoning every series known to man that was completed. So I marathoned it, and then I have read the first book in the Dance of Thieves duology. I actually don't know what the duology is called, but the first one is called The Dance of Thieves. Really enjoyed it. It's still in the same world as The Remnant Chronicles, so it was like a familiar world to me, just different characters. Really had a great time. I think maybe what this has taught me is that I like that world. I know it's not uncommon for some books to hit for you by an author and others to not. I just had a lot of high hopes for this one because it was her adult debut. She has been writing for a while. I've enjoyed series in the past. I felt like maybe I enjoyed her writing enough to like get into this, but I'm having trouble even keeping my footing in this world. So essentially this is following our main character Bristol Keats, and Bristol Keats lives in our world, like our world 2024, and she's trying to make ends meet and take care of her younger sister because her older sister is kind of in and out of their life. She does try to help, but she's sort of all over the place, and she's not a steady like adult presence in their life. So Bristol has kind of been left with the task of raising her sister, like helping out with her younger sister, and this is all because her parents went missing / passed away. But Bristol keeps receiving these letters from a long lost aunt who's like, I can help you. And Bristol is very hesitant about this because obviously she's never met this woman. She's never heard of this woman, but she reluctantly decides to meet her. She does in fact have an aunt, but this aunt's intentions are not necessarily to help them financially. They want Bristol Keats to come into Elfhame. And this is when Bristol realizes that Elfhame and this fairy world exist, and she gets a hint that her father, who supposedly died, may not be dead. And so she agrees to go on this mission in the fairy world. But her whole goal is that she's trying to find her dad, because that's like the mystery of this. But when we get to Elfhame, which Elfhame is very interesting to me, and I would say is the most interesting part of this book. I do think the world is very well done. I love the idea of a portal fantasy where there's a character who doesn't know something exists or kind of vaguely knows something exists and then ends up going into that world, kind of like the Wayward Children's. I think that's why I really like that concept. This has that. And so she gets to explore this whole new world that she doesn't know. And usually for me, that makes a really great like world building scenario. But we added in some elements into the story that like completely lost my interest, because suddenly this deal that she's making, she has to like basically go back to college and learn all of these new things. And I'm like, I don't care about this. I just want her to explore this world and like try to find her father. And then you find out some information that kind of was off-putting for me. That's a little bit spoilery that I'm not going to go into. And at the same time, I don't even feel connected to our main character in any way, shape, or form. It's very easy for me to put this book down and not think about any of the characters, to not think about this world. Like, it's actually a chore for me to pick this up. Like, the thought of picking it up and finishing it just feels like a whole task. It feels like a whole to-do. And so I don't want to. So I am going to be DNFing it. But it is all for those reasons. I just don't feel connected to it. I think while the interest for me is within Elfhame, I think that the way that we're going about exploring Elfhame and the fact that she's like in this school setting again, I don't know, I just don't like it. And I also don't like where I think this is going based off of the reveals that we got at a quarter of the way in. And so, funny story, I was talking to my coworker and we were chatting yesterday about what we were reading, and I said, oh, I started The Courting of Bristol Keats by Mary E. Pearson, and I'm feeling really like not into it, but I don't know if it's me or if it's the book. I'm just gonna give it a little bit longer. And she said, DNF it, babe. DNF it, because it's not worth your time. She read the arc of this and said that she ended up giving it 2 stars because, well, she felt the same way about me about not being attached to the characters and only really having interest in the world itself, but feeling like it wasn't really explored enough. And then she was talking about things like happening off page and that the ending was ridiculous. So she sent me screenshots of the end, even though I could have opened the book and read it. But she sent me screenshots of the specific scenes that she was talking about, and I read them and I was like, yeah, maybe I just need to put this down. So another flop in this video, which always sucks. This always really sucks. So I think maybe it's a me problem. Although a lot of people have been talking about their anticipated releases not being good. So it's probably also a book problem, but I feel in this scenario it might be me. So that being said, we really need a win. And I've already had 2 people message me specifically telling me that they read Servant of Earth by Sarah Hawley, which is the other book that I bought and I'm really excited about, although I'm tampering my expectations. But I've had 2 people message me and tell me that I need to pick it up immediately. It was like incredible. They need the second book like yesterday. So we are gonna pick that up immediately because we need a win. So we're gonna go into that and I'm really hopeful. Apparently, Sarah Hawley has been writing this book, or wrote this book years ago and has been sitting on it until like Faye got really popular. And so I feel like if you've had all this time to sit on a book and like edit it and think about it and make it perfect, like it's gonna be good, right? Right?
Saw you paint a picture of a face, a face that wasn't even close to mine. I know I shouldn't be in love, but it's so hard to move on. You haven't changed, you stayed the same. But if you did, I'd still love you anyway. I'd give you the world like I promised I would. Even though
I've officially started Servant of Earth, and I'm on chapter 14, which is 159 pages. And I am loving it. Thank God that I'm finally loving a book of this vlog, because it's been a series of flops. You know, you've watched it, you've seen it happen. First of all, we all know I really like Sarah Hawley. I have read the Glimmer Falls series, absolutely love it. Very different tone, very unserious at times. There's a lot of comedy, a lot of humor in it, but there are some like hard moments in it, and there is some really great like world building and plot lines, which is why it was like a witchy fantasy romance, more contemporary romance leaning book that stuck with me so much, because I felt like it did everything really well. She is bringing that energy to this book, okay? The world building is phenomenal. It started off kind of in the middle of things, and the plot took off immediately, and it's continued to have a really great pace. So at the beginning of this book, you meet our main character, Kenna, and literally at the beginning, the opening, she finds this dagger with this huge ruby in it, and she's thinking about how this could save her and her sister and provide a lot of money for them. Well, you also find out that today is like one of those naming days where women are getting sacrificed to the Fae. So Kenna ends up going to the ceremony. She's kind of under the impression like, my name will never get called for this, but her best friend slash soul sister, who she calls her sister, gets her name drawn, and Kenna's like, oh, absolutely not. I'm going to take my sister, I'm going to take this dagger, and I'm going to run. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to take the other women that got their names called too. So let's go, everybody. So she ends up trying to lead these women through this like boggy forest, and she starts to notice that the dagger she has is leading her through a path that only she can see. But also it's allowing her to see these really grotesque fairies that basically eat humans. So she's trying to get all of these women away from these fairies that are closing in on her. And it just turns into a situation where she gets sucked into the underworld, and she's basically thrust into this fairy world and has to become a servant to a mistress. And this mistress is actually undertaking a trial where if the Fae in question passes the trial, they will gain immortality. And so that's where I'm at. The trials have started, and it's a lot of fun. Trials are a buzzword for me, but they are also hit or miss for me, much like haunted house books. I think it's because I have certain expectations when it comes to trials or haunted house books. So I think maybe my expectations are a little bit too high, but this is doing what I love. The trials feel deadly. They feel like they have high stakes. I also just love the writing. I like our main character, Kenna. I like the way that she's interacting with this world that she doesn't really know. We're kind of learning about it through her, which is something I typically enjoy, is learning the world through a character, especially through a character like Kenna, because I love her attitude towards things, and I love how she's a little unpredictable. I really enjoy that. I also really love the fact that there is some political aspects that have slowly been creeping its way into this plot, and it's done in a way that's very interesting and leaving me on my toes. It's making me want to know what's going to happen next, which reading has been a little bit on the back burner for me since I've been rewatching The Vampire Diaries, but this one is keeping my attention. But otherwise, I'm having such a good time. I'm really loving the trials, really loving the writing. Sarah Hawley might be onto something here, okay? Sarah Hawley might be onto something here. Hi friends, I finished Servant of Earth and I loved it. I loved it. Like I said before, our main character, Kenna, she ends up going into the Fae underworld, and she is the maiden to a Fae who needs to go through these deadly trials. It's all elemental trials, so each of the branches of magic within the Fae are earth, fire, light, void, illusion, and blood. And so they have to successfully get through all of these trials based on these different elements in order to successfully gain immortality. And because of Kenna's position and the way that humans are kind of lowly in the Fae world, she is a servant, but she is specifically tasked to help her mistress succeed at these trials. And that's the really interesting part, because like technically Kenna is not supposed to be in these trials, but because she is helping her mistress succeed at these trials, she is very much involved in them, and she's like doing things left and right to try to help get information, like inside information, like what it's gonna be, or like hints on how to succeed. And she's very cunning, she's very smart in the realm of these trials, but in the realm of sometimes interacting with different Fae, she can be very naive. I did call her dumb at one point, but I do think Jonathan's right. She's just a naive character. And that's very much coming from like growing up human, not growing up around Fae, coming into this Fae world as a human, not knowing like their politics or how they interact with one another. One of the themes that kept popping up was kind of sex and sexuality, and how humans are much more in a box when it comes to sex and sexuality, whereas Fae are less like prudish, and they don't put as many constraints on sexuality and sex and intimacy the way that humans do. And that was something that Kenna was like encountering over and over again, is coming head to head with, in this case, this scenario, you know, sexuality, and feeling like she can't give in to carnal pleasures is what they're talking about. But it kind of happens in all aspects of life. She's kind of learning the ways that Fae and human differ. And I just really loved that way of world building, where our character is coming up against things that kind of go beyond her scope of beliefs or like how she was raised, and sort of relearning a new way of life since she's like living with the Fae. And I really enjoyed learning about it and experiencing these things with our character. Even when she was naive, I still really appreciated being in her perspective, in her head. I also think that the romance in here, while I'm not rooting for it, I do think that it was interesting, and I think it'll play into Kenna's character development. Where it goes, I have no idea. I have no idea where it's gonna go, and I have no idea what the next book is gonna be like, because the twists and the turns at the end of this had my jaw on the floor. Like, I wasn't expecting certain things at all, but I also want to reiterate that I went into this not having any expectations. But on the other hand, I don't think that this is so unique that you've never seen anything like it before. I think there are things here that you've definitely seen before. There are definitely tropes here that you've definitely experienced. There's definitely world building here that's probably going to be familiar. But the way that Sarah utilizes those tropes and utilizes her way of world building just really works for me. I'm also coming from a perspective of really liking her writing in general and really enjoying her other series so much. And while this is more serious, I do think the things that she's very strong at within her writing and plotting and world building and like character development and character dynamics, that's like almost tenfold in here. I feel like I enjoyed the writing even more so in this one. But all I have to say is that if an author can make me laugh out loud in a book, I already know that they're really good at what they're doing, which doesn't happen to me very often. And in the Glimmer Falls series, the other trilogy by her, I laughed a lot in it. So I think it's just safe to say that I really love this author and I really mesh with her writing, serious or unserious. So keep that in mind. I'm not gonna say that this is gonna be the most mind-blowing book of 2024, but for me, it did everything that I really needed and wanted at this point in time with like a fantasy romance especially. And the thing is, this is a fantasy romance, but I do feel like this leans more of a fantasy that has romance than a traditional fantasy romance where there's a lot of focus on the couple, because I don't really know that I would say there was a ton of focus on this couple throughout the entirety of the book. And also it's very hard to say like where their stories are going to go in general. So I would say this leans more fantasy than romance. Although there are sex scenes, there's definitely smut. I also don't know how long the series is going to be because I was under the impression that it's a duology, but I don't actually know. And I don't have my phone on me to look that up. I'm highly anticipating book 2. If it comes out next year, that will probably be my most anticipated release of the year, if I'm honest with you. And I'm just so excited to see what more Sarah has in store, especially in this series with Kenna, because Kenna's character arc was a ride. It was a ride. It was very interesting. And I would love to see this go in a very specific direction with our character. I would really love that. I would really, really love that. But anyway, thank you so much for hanging out with me, friends. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and let me know down below some of your most anticipated releases of this year and how they went for you. But also, are you anticipating anything for 2025? I'm kind of staying away from that. But I would love to know some of the things that you're excited about going into 2025. But if you've made it this far and you just want to say hi, feel free to leave like a knife or a dagger emoji down below, because there is a big old sword on here. And I will talk to y'all next time. Bye, friends.